Cheerio, and welcome to Live from Caid. Tonight, we have a special appearance by His Majesty Alexander. And our guest is His Highness of Insulae Draconis, Prince Avery. And featuring a live performance by Mistress Liudmila Vladimirova doch. Now me, I'm your announcer, Master Beorn of the Northern Sea. And here's your host, Master Laertes, McBride.
Greetings and good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. Normally at this part of the show is where I do some announcements about the kingdom. I'm not going to do that this time. We have His Majesty joining us this evening. Let's bring him on screen. And he'll be here. Hold on. And we're unmuted.
Excellent.
I understand you want to talk to the populace about some news that's come out of the board of directors.
I do. First, thank you for having me and allowing me to be here tonight. I'm very excited to be able to address everyone. As I hope all of you have seen, the board of directors has put out a statement saying that all in-person activities essentially will cease until January of 2021. Obviously, heartbroken to hear this, but not unexpected. This is something we've been talking about for a while, and seeing how current events are unfolding and in getting the best scientific information that we can get, we think this is probably the safest course. I wanted to come here tonight to let everyone know what our plan is. In speaking with all the royalty of the known world, we have actually all gotten together on our own little chat and discussed things that we feel would be best for the SCA as a whole from our position of royalty. So in talking with them and speaking with my officers, what we hope to accomplish is to put Caid into sort of a freeze as far as in-person events go. We want to hibernate through this period until we are able to safely meet again. In discussing coronation and our heirs and such, in speaking with all the royals of the world and my own personal feelings and that of our heirs, a coronation is a magical event. And it is something that truly cannot be matched. There is nothing that quite is like a coronation, especially for an incoming and an outgoing royal. To do that online, I feel would take away so much from the actual magic that happens that day. We would like to prevent that if possible. With the board of directors closing us down essentially until January, we are hoping that in January we will be able to have this coronation and allow our heirs to step up. It is also our hope that because of this time period that we have and where they have frozen everything and sort of put us all in our place to stay there, that we're going to give our heirs the best opportunity to have a normal reign and to get us back to where we were. This might not be the case. Obviously, this terrible disease could go on longer than that. It is obviously our hope that it does not, but should it, we do have plans in place. Come January, although my lady and I have no problem hanging on to the mantle, as it were, until January, because we feel that is best for our kingdom and our heirs. Beyond that, I do not think we have the strength for it. And we will be stepping down in January in either way. There are plans in place for what will happen should we have to step down in January, and if we are still in this unable to meet and come out in person. Our heirs will discuss that at that point, but that will be the time that we definitely step down, will be January. Going forward, as we try to move forward, as I said, the reason we are not stepping down immediately now is it was discussed with all the royals and our heirs and our officers, and it felt that right now the best chance to give us a normal run and to give them the reign they deserve, it would be best for us to stay in place. This has obviously been backed up by the board of directors, who has basically told everyone, all of the royals, to stay in place until such time as we can move on or we can no longer do the job. So if people have questions about how we are going to handle this or what they're going to do, I am hoping that you will send them to me. I believe you can send them to the crown at scacaid.org. Something in there. We'll get that up for you. I'm sure Laertes will be posting it any second. Sprung this one on him. But please feel free to reach out to us if you do have questions. I will try to answer as many as I can. Obviously, there are things that we have to do that the board has directed us to do. We got a slightly longer discussion with them than you will see on the letter that was just put out. So we understand what their intent is. We understand what our feelings are and what we are going to do what we feel is best for this kingdom in moving forward. So unless there are questions that we have already today, I don't believe that I saw any come by. Am I correct?
That's correct. No questions at this time. Your Honor.
Excellent. If there are, as I said, please again write to that address. I'll be happy to try and answer them. If you have me on Facebook, you're more than welcome to try and reach out to me. We hope that everyone understands this is a difficult position and we are making the best decisions that we can with the information. As I said earlier, many moons ago on this same show, we are going to make decisions after we have all the information, after we get local governments to tell us what they're going to do and all the scientific information. That's when we'll make our decisions, and now it has come to pass. So this is where we sit, Caid. I look forward to seeing all of you soon. Please continue our massive online presence, because that is exactly what we want.
So, Your Majesty, just thank you very much for coming on, and I appreciate giving an update to everyone. I know everyone else does too. Just one point of clarification: if people have complaints about what you said, they should just reach out to Sir Tiberius. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, he is sort of has agreed to be the catch-all for any complaints in the kingdom whatsoever. So should you have a complaint of any type, feel free, reach out, Sir Tiberius, Facebook, email, he doesn't care. Any way you want, he is the person to definitely go to.
Yeah, at any time of day, right?
24/7. He told me he doesn't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning. He's more than happy to help any citizen of Caid at any time.
So kind of him.
He's a very kind man.
Again, Your Majesty, thank you very much. And
thank you for having me.
We'll be talking soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's bring in Beorn and see what he has to say. Where did he go? He should be. There you are. Just a moment. Good evening, Beorn.
Good evening.
So I know we all appreciate His Majesty coming on and give us an update of what the guidance from the board of directors means to everyone. So
true, and I knew that because of the timing for when Their Highnesses assumed the mantle as the heirs was so close to when this COVID situation happened, that they would probably be in the straits that they were in, and other kingdoms, as Their Majesty had said, other kingdoms, their heirs are also in similar situations. So I just hope that we're able to move forward, that people in the mundane space are able to actually wear their masks, wash their hands, practice the social distancing necessary, so that not only can we play our silly game, but that we can also do it safely, and that people can move forward and heal. And also so that Her Majesty doesn't have to work back to back 16-hour days, because I don't think anybody would like that.
No, not at all. You have to admire the people that are out there that are dedicating their time to get us through this.
Absolutely.
It seems an odd transition, but let's kind of bring it back to the show. And speaking of how it how about affects people, we are going to get the perspective a little bit later from His Highness Avery on how they're handling it overseas and the kingdoms in that part of the SCA. But before we get there, let's talk about some of the arts and sciences sites that you're going to promote this week.
Thank you very much. So one of the best things about practicing at home and being able to hit the Pell or do your hopscotch on the ground where you're doing your footwork is when you're not doing those things by yourself and you want to try and get into the aspects of training where you get a chance to watch other folks that you would normally do at a fighter practice or would you normally do at a tournament or crown. One of the best sites for that is actually by His Highness of Insulae Draconis, and that would be Sir Avery's. On Avery's YouTube channel, he has an entire section that is called Avery's Medieval Vids, and it's on the YouTube right there. I recommend it highly. It has everything from fight breakdowns, including almost the sort of NFL Sunday ticket live slow-mos and arrows and things drawn through, which actually, as you might hear later on in our conversation with His Highness, was inspired by a Caidan night. And it also, there are where you have signature shots series, where there is a special shot that is thrown by a duke or a knight or someone that has that fancy snap thing that they do, and they show it in real time, then they show it slowed down, and then they show it in certain scenarios. And it is an exceptionally useful resource for folks that when you've been out there in the Pell, or you've been doing your footwork and you need something else to assist you. It's really fantastic. Now, so that is the first site for us to deal with, and the second one, and the second one is about our second guest. So we had a discussion about Japanese personas last week, and this week we're going to talk about people who wish to do recreations of the Slavic personas. And to that end, there is a Facebook group that is championed by Mistress Liudmila, in addition to many others who do all of the necessaries that share resources, bibliographies, and all those sorts of things. But in addition to that, there are two websites that they draw upon heavily within the Facebook group. One of them is called Slavic Interest Group, and it's something I'm just throwing out there. And it is the website that then morphed into the Facebook page, and it's just slavic.freeservers.com. All the things that you find on the Facebook group and then some are kept up to date. But the original, if you just want to not check on Facebook for some reason, you're like, I'm not on Facebook right now, then go to the Free Servers website. The other one would be the one that is actually run by Mistress Liudmila herself, which is just scarussian.com. It's really simple. There's no dot, there's no dash, there's nothing in between it. It's just scarussian.com. But those sites, because real life happens, may not necessarily be kept up to date as much as the Facebook group itself. So if you want to see the initial, or dare I say, vestigial attempts at codifying Slavic resources online, then you might want to go to the websites. If you would like a real-time discussion with people that continue to do work in medieval and Renaissance Russian or Slavic studies, then I think probably the best place to go would be the Facebook group. The folks there are very friendly, and they're more than willing to answer any questions that you might have. So those are the two websites that, technically a Facebook group and a YouTube channel that we're going to be discussing this week. And that's that.
So potpourri of selections this week. I always wanted to use potpourri in a sentence other than watching Jeopardy. So who do we have lined up as our first guest this evening?
We have, all the way from the charming lands of the UK, His Highness of Insulae Draconis, Prince Avery, and so he will be joining us, and it's a fun conversation, I think.
So just to be up and up, this portion is not going to be live, given the 8-hour time difference. For some reason, Avery, His Highness did not want to stay up till 3 a.m. or at least try to get home by 3 a.m. to do an interview with us. So,
young people nowadays.
I know. Well, so we will turn over to the interview, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we do. And here we go. Well, greetings, Your Highness. How are you?
Greetings. Pretty well, all things considered. We've had a lovely day. It's coming to a close here. The sun's actually just setting outside, but it's been a nice weekend, and I also just had a week off, so I'm as good as it gets in the circumstances. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing well. You know, it's a sunny, hot Southern California. You know how it is this time of year. Lots of heat, and really we're not out doing much. So it is what it is. So I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us out here on the West Coast to find out what's going on out in England. So where in England are you?
I'm in London, also known as Tim's Reach. When I first moved here, it was a little odd. I trained myself so carefully to say things like Starcoffin instead of Las Vegas because, you know, it sounds more period. I catch myself trying to not say London because I want to use the period name. So I switch between Tim's Reach and London, both being pretty accurate, I suppose.
And how long have you lived out there now?
It's been about a year and a half now. I guess maybe just a little bit longer. Time's sort of flying, this summer. It's going by unmarked. But yeah, I came out, that's been exactly a year and a half. Yeah, just over.
So you lived in Caid before that. Have you been in other kingdoms too?
Yeah, I traveled a lot. I guess I've been all up and down the west coast of the SCA. So I started in Ontir, and I was there for many years. First in the barony of Lionsgate, and then down in the barony of Madrona. And I moved to the Principality of the Mists in the Kingdom of the West. From there, I moved on down to Gildenholt and Caid, and now over to Tim's Reach in Insulae Draconis of Drachenwald.
So you've been doing the tour. That's nice.
Pretty much, yeah.
You should get a
put down some roots here.
Right, a little T-shirt with the kingdoms on the back. It'd be perfect. So obviously, you're the Prince of Insulae Draconis, right? I'm horrible. That's why Beorn pronounces everything for me. So.
Not
yeah. We stepped up. Here we do the coronet tourney and the step up at the same event. So we fought the tournament and stepped up in February. And we typically do a 9-month reign here because that calendar works a little bit better for Insulae Draconis. So we're scheduled to step down at the beginning of October in the coronet tournament to determine our successors. But of course, that'll be depending on the return of society to good health and the availability of a tournament at the time.
So, out here in North America, we've recently got the ruling handed down, I think just a couple of days ago, by the board of directors about basically shutting down events in North America through February 1st. And of course, His Majesty just spoke to the populace right before we started your interview to talk about the direct impact on Caid. Now, I think it's a little bit different on your side of the ocean. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually. So I think who knows if everything all starts in the same place, but their Majesties of the Outlands pulled together a petition, and they did their very best to include all royalty across the world. So they reached out to us, including their Majesties of Drachenwald, asking for support and for whether people would be willing to sign that petition to pass along to the bod, or if they had any recommendations for adjusting it. And then, of course, recommendations from Laertes and Drachenwald were included in there to make it clear that the language was, where it applied more specifically to North America, and how Canada and the U.S. might be in a similar situation. But for instance, parts of Laertes are basically illness-free right now. So it was with the help of our Majesties, the King and Queen of Drachenwald, that our policy was sort of set for Europe and Africa. I think we have more than 24 countries that have SCA presence outside of Canada and the US, and then they're all both in different circumstances in terms of their health, public health, and then also in terms of legal jurisdictions and stuff like that. So Insulae Draconis, this principality alone has several different mundane countries included in it. So it's a little bit difficult to make one big policy that applies to all of them.
Yeah, that one size fits all is tough, and it's been tough kingdom to kingdom over here, as they've been trying to figure out. I know a couple of kingdoms were trying to get practices back up and get more involved, and then as the virus went its course, they had to shut back down or narrow what they were trying to accomplish. So just kind of being out and about in London, y'all kind of been on a little roller coaster too. How have you been adapting to what's been going on? Well,
mundanely things are, they're interesting here. I think we're in a slightly better place than some areas, and in London maybe a little worse off than in others. So we went through a lockdown that has prohibited, public gatherings. That means that there's been no events actually since we stepped up, and practice has been off. Been missing practice. However, people in the streets have been asked to stay 1 meter apart, 6 feet apart for months now. My mundane workplace it sent everyone home in February or March, and we've been fortunate enough to work mobile. The princess is in the same sort of circumstance. Her company's got her working mobile, so we're sort of fortunate ones. and the plague seems to be under some control. But at the same time, there's also been, well, mundane news is a better answer to that than I am. But when I talk to friends back in Caid, back in Ontier in the West, it sounds like life in London is actually not that different than life in other major cities that I've lived in right now.
Yeah, that's kind of the impression I've gotten too, just from watching the mundane news. So enough of that stuff. Let's talk about living in a different kingdom. So, other than saying the castles aren't made of hay bales and railroad ties, what would you say the main differences between the events are from where you are now for your experience on the West Coast?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, I don't know how to fight with real castles. I can't, throw shots through walls, accidentally not notice that I've fallen off the drawbridge. So real castles are a pain to deal with, because when you fall off the drawbridge, it's not just a marshal telling you that you've lost a life. No, Drachenwald's really exciting. The way that events are done here is obviously quite a bit different. People often have international travel to get to events. That means that usually people are flying or perhaps traveling pretty light. So for instance, when you go to most events that I've been to, there will be sleeping halls with bunks. Obviously, we're not doing that right now. But often there's a lot of accommodation on site with beds. You might bring your own bedding, or bedding might be provided. There's often people will bring spare feastware, because feastware is bulky, and especially if you're trying to fly with carry-on bags only. You're not supposed to be bringing eating knives and stuff like that. For the fighters out there, I know several fighters who fight with a shield that is specifically meant to fit in a carry-on bag. Duke Leaf, for instance, I think he was in Eldamir before, fought with a round shield. Now he fights with an oval that is his round shield with the two sides cut off at the width of his bag. So there's a lot of work done to make traveling easier. There's also usually 2 meals a day provided, included with your site fees. So usually breakfast and dinner are done sort of as feasts, which is pretty cool. The Drachenwald is also obviously a very mundanely international kingdom. So you get obviously there's a lot of Swedes, and here in Insula Draconis we get a lot of Scottish and English and Welsh and Irish folks, and some Icelandic folk as well, just within the principality. But we also have people who've moved from all over the world. So there's people from New Zealand and Australia and Canada and the US, all quite active in Drachenwald as well. So it's really international.
Now, I can speak from the rapier side, that like when I travel to like the Gulf Coast states or northern states or the East Coast, the fighting is a little bit different. Interpretation of the rules, there's slight regional variations.
Yeah.
Being so separated, did you run across any of that when you started being involved over there?
Honestly, not much. I was expecting a little bit more. This is the 4th kingdom I've lived in, so I guess I've adjusted some. But most of the kingdoms I've lived in before were sort of descended of the West. Caid, Ontier, and obviously the West all sort of share a lineage in terms of fighting culture. There were things that you could see how they carried on. I thought Drachenwald, coming from the East, might have, sort of a different fighting culture. I haven't done a lot of rapier fighting here, but I've observed a fair bit. And in terms of armored combat, I actually haven't seen a lot of differences in terms of, regional expectations, right? So when I look at Onstioran fighting, I see stronger differences than I see with Drachenwald fighting, for instance. So things like how close do you get to people when they're on their knees and that sort of thing. Honestly, the thing that shocked me is that it's actually not very different. And then for folks interested, calibration is about the same, and Drachenwald plays with pretty close to society Marshal's Handbook rules. So there's not a bunch of extra rules. But for instance, you need forearm protection if you're an armored fighter. So you got to wear van braces. But there's not a lot of differences. I was prepared for more.
Now, since you're in England and you're Prince, do you get to hang out at Buckingham Palace or like have dinner with the Queen?
She hasn't invited me yet, but I think that's probably due to the circumstances. Although honestly, yes, I mean you can't live here and be interested in the Middle Ages and not go visit places. We did like Caid, we had a little dance video for the Principality. It was put together by some really good editors, and a lot of people contributed. Her Highness and I we went down to the Tower of London and danced outside it until we were asked to leave, because we thought, it was during lockdown, but it was outdoors. We could stay away from people, avoid taking public transit because we could walk and then record the video there. So we were able to get to Hampton Court Palace just before it shut down. Buckingham, we have not been inside yet.
Yeah, I actually saw your video. It was quite fun. Now, speaking of Her Highness, how long has she lived in Kingdom? I mean,
she's lived in the Kingdom her whole life. She was born in the north of England, and I've started to learn the regional differences mundanely as well. So she's a pretty fierce Northerner, but has been living in London for a few years now. But she hasn't lost her sort of Northern forthright way of speaking, and sort of that sort of famous friendliness of folks from that area.
Now, this is usually the point in time where I turn this over to Beorn to ask a question. So, Beorn, do you have a question for His Highness?
I do. Your Highness, one of the things that I do on this show is I try and promote various websites that we have that help to display arts and sciences within the SCA. And one of the ones that I chose for this week, of course, was your YouTube channel. Because I think that as a cut and compartmentalize various aspects of a fight for perusal and discussion, it's really one of the better ones out there. And I wanted to ask, how did you get started doing your YouTube videos? Did you just start videotaping fights and then just started dubbing your responses, or did people start sending them to you? How did you really get started breaking fights down on YouTube?
Yeah, great question. Particularly with the fight breakdowns, all the credit goes to Sir Helgi of Caid. I went to a collegium in Caid maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I don't quite remember when. It was my first collegium there, and Helgi was teaching a class on shot mechanics and alignment, so that when you throw a blow and it bounces off at a slightly different angle, it didn't quite sink as well. If it bounces straight back in a line, that it delivered as much power as it could without skipping, and that sort of angle of incidence and that sort of stuff. And he was using the technology that I like to use for fight breakdowns. So Sir Helgi sort of inspired those fight analyses. I've done a hodgepodge of other types of videos before, but I think the things that people have found the most useful, at least on as far as I can tell on my channel, is those breakdowns, and that's all Sir Helgi.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that, and I remember that we had talked about that, which he still continues to do. Well, at least up until the cessation of all activity. And the second thing I wanted to ask you about was, so do you have a particularly favorite ancient London watering hole that might have been displayed in a recent film on Netflix that you care to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, a friend is the one who turned me on to it. Mundanely, a guy that I lived near in both Seattle and in Southern California. He encouraged me to go for fish and chips at a place now called the Mayflower Inn, which is named for a ship, the Mayflower, obviously, that is of historical significance out of period, and had been departed from a pier just a few down, I think, from that inn. I forget what it was called before it was called the Mayflower. So it's a 16th century sort of inn, and it's right on the Thames, obviously. When the tide goes out, there's a bunch of mud underneath it. Underneath the deck, you can look between the old slats and see the mud, and you can go mudlarking down there, which is sort of like amateur archaeology. You get a permit for it. You can dig up Roman pottery and give it to the museum. It's pretty cool, or whatever you find. And then when the tide comes in, you're over the water, and it happens really quickly. So as you know, the fish and chips there are quite good. And then we were watching, I can't even recall the name of the movie, but we were watching a film and the final scene was in it, which reminded me of how much I want to get back there. And I would sure hate for a business that's been around for centuries to be badly impacted by the plague. So I definitely want to give them some money and relieve them of some of their beer, fish, and chips.
Well, I do think it was really interesting because the movie was that Charlize Theron a vehicle, the Old Guard, and I remember when you sent me the text about it, and because I was watching it with someone, and I immediately had my shoulder tugged. That was the place. That's where we had fish and chips with Avery, and so I thought it was really fascinating that regardless of the time of day or night, when the tide was in or out, it just had that beautiful look to it. And so I was really quite surprised when you see that kind of a thing, and I wouldn't have been turned on to it either if you. Thank you for that. And yes, I think if we can definitely show support for food services during these times, every little bit helps to keep those afloat, especially ones of such great historic significance as must be in London at this time.
Yeah, I mean, that place is famous for having Charlize Theron in it, so that's historically consequential. I suppose if anyone, after travel resumes, London is a pretty busy hub. People come through a lot, so let's make this. I can't necessarily call it an open invitation because I'm not always available or in town, but if anyone is in town and looking for fish and chips in London, perhaps we can go out and join you.
Oh, or when you come here, I'll take you to Long John Silver's and you can have some fish and chips.
We'll take you up on that.
Well, I think it must be fascinating to have been involved in the SCA out here on the West Coast and then actually be in the place where we're trying to recreate certain aspects of it. So I appreciate your time. So now, as you know, like we want to end our time with you with a little trivia game that we play, and we tailor it for each one of our guests. So, hey, Beorn, so what's the name of this one that we're doing this week?
Today's game is Yep, Your Highness.
That's right. So, as you know, there's a slight difference between what we shall call the Queen's English and what we say over here in America. So, I'm going to give you the American word and see if you can come up with the British word for it. So, we just got a few. Are you good for this, Your Highness?
Yes, I will not cheat as best as I can. I could just ask Your Highness for help, but I wouldn't do such a thing.
You know who cheated the most was the Society Marshal when I had him name all the kingdoms and he couldn't do it. So we saw him look it up on the computer while he was talking to us.
Well, you guys both know me. I'm accustomed to failure, so I won't cheat.
There you go. Well, I'll try not to disappoint. Okay, so how about, you know what? I'll do the other way because I want to say the British version. So you can say the American version. So, porridge. Easy.
Oh, well, my impulse is to say oatmeal, but I might be mistaken. The food is the trickiest thing.
You're good. Another easy one. Flat. What's a flat?
It's like an apartment, usually rented.
See, I wasn't doing hard yet. Waistcoat.
A waistcoat is a vest, but not what the British people would call a vest.
Okay. Right.
That's a singlet or a tank top.
Oh, here's a good one. This one's easy too. Torch.
Oh, well, nowadays, a flashlight or your phone, anything that emits light.
Right. A rubber.
That is on the end of your pencil for removing mistakes. In the US, they're more for preventing them.
Very nice. A chair.
A chair? I mean, a chair might be the person who coordinates a conversation, much like you are. But generally, I would say for sitting on.
Yeah, it's a chair. Yeah, and that's from a classic sitcom identified in the comments, and I'll tell you if you're right or not. Let's see, braces. You're wearing braces.
Suspenders. And if I'm not mistaken, braces are the ones that specifically go to buttons as opposed to having clips on them.
You're correct. Okay, last one. Jacket potato.
I believe a jacket potato is a potato with its skin on still.
Yes, a baked potato.
Unpeeled.
Wow, you are fluent in the Queen's English.
Maybe I'll share with you one, and I won't reveal what it means in British. I don't know that the Queen would use this term. But I was at work and I thought I'd done pretty well, especially having been raised in Canada and exposed to a little bit of British television. I thought I knew most of the things that would catch you out, as the British say. But I don't know if you're familiar with those brown jugs with a little handle on them that you would get empty for maybe $5. You take them to the brewery and fill it up with beer. And you screw a cap on it. You would take that away and drink it over the course of a night. It's smaller than a pony keg. You wouldn't leave it for a week because it'd go flat, but you can take this thing to the brewery and get it filled. And if you were in Caid, there's probably plenty of breweries. So I had a few of those, and there's lots of breweries in London. And I was asking some of my coworkers on Friday, we were drinking after work, as we are wont to do. And I said, hey guys, do you know where I could go fill a growler on a Friday night? And I got spit takes from them. I won't tell you what a growler is in British slang, but I'll tell you that my coworkers had to give me the benefit of the doubt because it turns out that was a slang term I hadn't heard before in Britain. They don't call it that.
Okay, well, now I'm curious, and I'm afraid it will corrupt my browser history if I actually look it up.
Google carefully.
I'm just really curious about what the comments are going to be for that.
Well, you know what, Your Highness, thank you so much for your time today. Like I said, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get a perspective of what's happening far away from where we are and seeing how you guys are handling the challenges that are out there, how you're keeping your spirits up, and, you know, really just to learn a little bit more of how it's done differently. So it's good to see you. It's been much too long. I'm glad you're doing well. And really, thank you so much. And Beorn, you want to say something like that?
By all means. Avery, my friend, thank you very much for spending time with us, and congratulations on the principality. And the 9-month thing is really what's so odd about Insulae Draconis, because I don't think Nordmark does it that way. I think you might be one of the only places that does have a 9-month reign. So hopefully, by the time you're able to choose your successors, I hope that things are far better under control in the UK, and that all of you are able to stay safe and healthy.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, fingers crossed. We might actually be some of the only people who don't have a disrupted continuity. So that would be wonderful. Maestro, thank you so much. It's really nice seeing both of you. And to anyone watching, miss you all. And collect hugs from these two next time you see them on my behalf, please.
All righty. Thank you again, Your Highness. You have a great rest of your night. We'll talk to you.
Cheers, everyone.
So great to hear.
It was a lot of fun.
It sounds like they're doing quite well out there in jolly old England.
Yeah, that 9-month reign is odd, and I have checked, and I don't think any other places, no other principalities do it that way. And so it's a long haul. But because they do have because the principality tournament and the immediate coronation happen on the same day, there's no need for overlap. There's none of the usual things that happen with other reigns. So it ends up where you're probably doing in the same amount of service as you would do if you were an heir and then on the throne. So it probably does work out.
Right. You just got to pack properly for the end of the tournament. That's what you need to do, right? All right. So let's transition from there to who is our performer for this evening.
So in keeping with the beauty of unusual circumstances and what inspiration causes us to do, we have perhaps one of my favorite inspirational people. Mistress Liudmila is going to be performing a piece that she wrote in response to a lot of the things going right now. So I can't wait to turn it over to her.
All righty. Well, let me get you off screen for a moment and welcome our guest. And she will be here in just one moment. And here she comes right now. Good evening.
Добрый вечер.
And how are you this evening?
I am wonderful. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little warm. It needs more ventilation in this room. But
Yes,
so,
well tried.
well, you look amazing. And once again, a very amazing accessory upon your head.
Thank you.
I know we haven't spoken much at events. We cross paths and we visit. But don't take this wrong, but I always consider you the person I just did not want to sit directly behind in court because of your amazing hair.
Try not to have anybody sit directly behind me in court. So that kind of limits my court of viewing opportunities.
I know, but you've always been very considerate to place yourself so that when your splendid hats aren't like in someone's eye line. But just Just an aside. So you've written this piece, and we're going to have it on here. But how long have you been writing poetry and performing?
Well, so in high school, I went through an emo phase, as one does, and I wrote a lot of poetry then to deal with my feelings. And poetry in Russian is very different. Russian does not have fixed sentence structure, so you can put any word wherever you want to put that word. There is a lot more flexibility in rhyming and how you want to word things. So I didn't actually think when I lived here that I would be able to write poetry. And I didn't until I joined NSCA and I started doing storytelling and performance, and I tried my hand at that, and it turned out that I can, though it ends up being problematic because sometimes I don't hear the words the same I do other people. But I write when I get very moved by something. So there's been times sort of in the history of Caid, in fact, in the last few years, where I have been moved to write things that I don't always share because sometimes it's private or it may be upsetting to some people, so I may only share them with friends. But sometimes I write things that because the emotion moved me and then I want to share them. So my favorite thing actually is when there is Bard of Caid, in which I have competed, I don't actually know how many times. I do not know why I tried. There is absolutely no way somebody who does not sing or has no other versatility can possibly win that thing. But my favorite thing, and that's one of the reasons I do that, is that round where they throw a few words at you and you have to come up with something. So that's another way I usually come up with some poems, and some of them wanted to be songs. This one also actually wants to be a song, and in fact, Baroness Brianna already sang it, or attempted to improvise a melody to it. So.
Well,
they are in my head, but I'm tone deaf, so I can't.
Well, I'm sure Her Excellency is watching the show. She often does. So, you want to speak a little bit about the piece you're going to perform this evening? About the name of the piece you're going to perform?
So it's an interesting thing that you and Master Beorn were just discussing the length of reign in that principality, been 9 months, because the name of the piece is The Longest Reign.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show today. And the floor is yours for your piece. Thank you.
Thank you. In our great land, since olden days, the mighty sit the throne, and by their side a consort stays to help them set the tone. For only half a year they rule, for just 6 months up high, and then another will unspool from fate's wheel by and by. Each reign may be remembered well, or it may fade to dust. Some kings inspire, some compel, and some may be unjust. The consorts shine as jewels bright to lead in grace and arts. Some also falter as they might, but most do win our hearts. But every year, since early times, 2 tourneys for the crown, this kingdom holds as it decides which pair shall will renown. Yet, not this year, in times of plague, in days of strife and grief, for when our future looks so vague, our reigns cannot stay brief. The crown's weight is thus increased, more than is just or fair. The joys that came with it have ceased, as we can't meet and share. And yet, the 2 that rule today, with no complaint in sight, accepted that they have to stay and reign as best they might. With strength and grace they lead in calm, we who are secluded, and they may feel any qualm, it is not exuded. So it proceeds, the longest reign of Alexander Rex. Tahira shares in his domain, whatever may come next. The queen is fair, and the king may have some troubles past, but unity they both now bring, as they remain steadfast. They have us do what must be done. They spread the joy around. To finish what they have begun, the longest reign us crowned. Long live the king, long live the queen, long live Caid, our land. Until the cure or vaccine, we thank you for your stand.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on our show today and sharing that. I'm very impressed, especially I've said this to other performers. You're just sitting in your room talking to a piece of glass, and to bring the emotion and the to bring us into a moment. I'm so impressed by those things. Thank you very much. And Beorn, do you want to say anything right quick?
I do. Thank you so much, cousin. I greatly appreciate it. And I think you really captured how we all feel. And I will hazard at saying, I think you have captured the way the crown has shouldered this burden. And I obviously can't speak for them, but I think that you have done them well with this beautiful poem.
Thank you. I have not always been a fan of His Majesty, but I greatly admire what they're doing throughout this difficult time. I think they've been marvelous.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Have a great rest of your evening, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other in person sometime soon. Have a great night. Thank you.
Good night.
Wow. We were chock full of show today.
Indeed, we were.
We had His Majesty and a prince and an amazing performance.
Mm-hmm.
So
we did indeed.
So let's talk about who's going to be on next week. I can tell you for our guest, we're going to continue kind of with the theme. Mistress Juliana de Luna, who is the Laurel Sovereign of Arms for the SCA, is going to be on our show and tell us what the Laurel Sovereign of Arms does, other than disappoint people when they have a really cool heraldry.
Yeah, I first learned the term slot machine heraldry when I tried to do my first submission, and that was 1983. But it was slot machine heraldry. I confess, I did a bad job. But I was 13. What do you expect?
So that's who we have on next week. And do we have anyone lined up for a performance?
So as far as bardic performances, the neat thing about that is that right now we have the rest of August planned out as far as who we will have perform. The issue is who takes the 10th, who takes the 17th, who takes the 24th. And so now it's sort of a jockeying to where how the schedules best fit with the individual performers. But we have a lot of fantastic folks. We have a duo coming on as in addition to other performers. And it's just, they're all being very considerate of us since we do this on Mondays, but they're all in different times and places as well. And so it's just a question of everyone's working together, and the bards are all, as you say, okay, who wants to sing to the square on the 10th? Who's going to sing at the square, the little piece of glass on the 17th? And so I'm not going to say yet because we're still figuring it out, but we have everybody. We just have to figure out where they are.
I'm really hoping for a jug band. So
actually, Master Martin has Rommel pots. So don't say that. If you really wish for that, then yes, we can have something that sounds like an entire group of flatulent bullfrogs, if that's really your thing.
Hey, everyone has their thing, right? So anyway, thank you again, my friend. I'm glad you're doing well. And thank you for putting on such a good show.
Thank you very much, sir. As always, it was good being here, and I'll see you next week.
All righty. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And again, join us next week when once again we will be live from Caid. We'll see you then.
Bye, everybody.